All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully we get a few more stragglers coming in, either in the room or via Zoom, which way or the other. First, I'd like to recognize a new member, Steve McCullough. Steve, glad that you joined the group.
Yeah, that's when Kevin, my son, and Jordan are kind of got me interested in. How many members do we have now?
You make it 57.
Oh, okay.
And if you have any wonderful ideas to get all 57 of those people to show up on a meeting night, I'm open to all suggestions. Coercion, taking a bus around Denver. I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, I don't, do they, can you tell how many views you get after the meeting on the recordings?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So you do get quite a few there.
Yeah. Obviously, there's no way to separate out on YouTube through, if they're a member, if they're not a member.
Right.
It's not tracked to that degree. We do have presentation that Stephanie Johnson did on intentional camera movement on ICM photography has almost 2,000 views.
Oh,
So
wow.
obviously, like lots of people on YouTube were watching that because it was a fantastic program. But on average, I'd say, we're under 100 for most of our either competitions or programs. There are some popular ones, but
That's amazing. That's great.
yeah, I thought it was pretty fantastic when I saw that number. But and James, you are a guest this evening, a friend of Kyle's. We appreciate you being here, sir. Would you like to share a little bit about what type of photography you do and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is my second meeting as a guest, and I'm happy to be here. I especially wanted to learn about Kyle's method of creating zines, because my current style of photography that I spend most of my time on is street photography. And I'm interested in producing a zine of some of that work that I can share with people that I encounter to show them what I do. But for the years, I was primarily interested in landscape and travel. But I'm finding that I like the fact that when you do a street photo, it's a unique, one-of-a-kind photograph, and that kind of attracts me to it. So that's kind of my focus.
Very good. Awesome. Well, again, glad to have you here, sir.
Thanks.
Do we have any guests in the room?
Nope.
All righty.
Yes. Very good.
Well, the only announcements I really have are for future meetings. We've got the competition this month, which is panoramas in 2 weeks. So get out there and shoot your multi-image panoramas or shoot with your phone or whatever it takes. And then in July, our program is with Chris Gampat. Chris is the editor of a website called the Phoblographer, which some of you may have heard of. It's a very popular photo blog, covers a whole bunch of stuff, not just camera reviews, but a lot of instructional material and everything else. It is pretty awesome, but we're going to hear from him. Chris is visually impaired, but has made a career in the photo field, has worked at all kinds of places like PDN and B&H Photography and a whole bunch of other places. Has written for lots of other stuff too. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be interesting to hear his story. And for those of you on Zoom, I've popped the link to that website if you haven't been there yet. Kyle, would you like to introduce our presenter for this evening?
Well, yes, I will. I didn't actually come prepared with an introduction since I am our presenter. It's a sort of meta, if you will. But I will ask Carl if you can keep an eye on any comments that pop up, because I have a feeling I might not see them. I would appreciate that. Quick introduction. I guess I've been a Focus Camera Club member for at least 2 years. I'm honestly not sure how long, 2, 3 years, something like that. I credit it for really getting me back into finding some enthusiasm around my photography, that as well as the Denver Street Photography Facebook group that I'm a part of. I don't know what else to say. I like Jim mentioned, I tend to mostly do street photography, or I'm starting to call it urban photography because I don't always shoot people, and I think that there's a preconceived notion that street photography always has people in it. Sometimes I don't always shoot people, but I like the urban style of photography. So I've been shooting since I was in high school, with obviously a film camera, and have been passionate about photography ever since. All right, well, without any further ado, let's get to our presentation. And I'll introduce Kyle. Take it away. Okay, thanks.
And if I could say, just everybody on Zoom, please mute so that we're not interrupting Kyle. And like you said, I'll keep tabbing on the chat and see if there's anything that pops up. But are there some places in your presentation where you can naturally stop for questions?
Yeah, and I would urge. There's the first portion of the presentation is going to be a slide deck, which isn't going to take very long. So getting back to what you were asking me, Carl, we're going to do a slide deck that's not going to take too terribly long. And then the fun part of tonight is going to be an actual layout from start to finish of a zine. It's going to be however many pages it turns out to be based on how much time we have, but I'm shooting for at least about probably 24 or so. And then we're going to create a press-ready PDF and upload it to the online printer so you guys can all see just how simple a process this really is. And I want to encourage, really honestly, if there's questions along the way, I think from my perspective, it's just best to address those right away. So if anybody has any questions, just pop on. I don't mind. I'm going to start with my slide deck. We're going to make a zine, as I said. All right, so we're going to talk about what a zine is. We're going to go over a short history of zines. I want to spend a tiny amount of time talking about why one might create a zine, because I think that is probably a big question a lot of you guys have. And we're going to move on to the particulars, okay? Types of binding, there are several, and printers that I've used and one that I recommend. That'll wrap up the slide presentation, and then we'll get into, as I mentioned, the layout, the file upload, and then any additional Q&A that you guys might have. So here we go. A zine is short for a magazine or fanzine, and is generally a non-commercial, self-produced, or do-it-yourself, DIY, often photocopied pamphlet or short-form booklet whose subject matter is typically singular, specialized, or unconventional. Historically, dissidents, underrepresented, and marginalized groups have published their own opinions in leaflet and pamphlet form for as long as such technology has been available. That is to say, the printing press and more recently photocopiers and inkjet printers. I include a picture of my all-time favorite dissident, of course, as you guys all know. I'm sure you recognize that as Václav Havel from Czechoslovakia. One of the best dissidents of all time. Many people trace Zine's lineage from as far back as Thomas Paine's popular 1776 pamphlet, Common Sense. An image of the cover there is to the left, to Benjamin Franklin's literary magazine for psychiatric patients at a Pennsylvania hospital, and a publication called The Dial by Margaret Fuller and Ralph Waldo Emerson. So if any of you are sitting there thinking, what is this zine nonsense? A zine, I've never heard of that. It goes back. It goes back pretty far. Although the term zine was not actually first coined until 1940 by a science fiction writer named Russ Chauvenet, perhaps. The image to the left is just a random mid-century science fiction fanzine. I don't think it's connected to Russ Chauvenet, but I thought the illustration on the cover was pretty cool. All right, so what type of zines can we do? We can do anything. Today, a zine can be as a professional looking or not as you want to make it, and its subject matter is limited only by your imagination. So I just did a quick brainstorm and came up with these things. Calendars or cookbooks, okay? A collection, think your kids or grandkids clubs, sports, projects, whatever. You could use a zine to market yourself or your small business. It could be a coffee table book of your own work or a portfolio. Those two things are pretty related. It could be a collection of short stories or poetry. It could be a graphic novel, maybe using some of your photos. I think that would be fun. Or crazy idea here, but an annual yearbook for, say, a photography club. I actually bring this up because the class that I took that Eric Hegeman hosted, he is a member of the Southwest Metro, or Southwest Photography Club is the name of it. But they, at the end of the year, do a yearbook of their members' photography. Members opt into it and they pay a little bit of fee to get it produced. But I looked at some of it virtually and it looked pretty cool. So maybe something to talk about down the road for the board. But anyway, there's really no limit to what you might do with a zine. The next zine I put together is going to be one of my street photography. Well, tonight's zine I'm going to upload, but I'm probably not going to actually have it printed. But I'd like to do a zine of my street photography that I can have with me when I'm out shooting. And so if anybody asks me just what the heck I'm doing, I can say, look, here's some of the stuff that I've done. And it's really cool. And it's just a personal thing. So don't be offended that I'm taking your picture. I want to share an example of a zine that I put together several years ago and printed out on my crappy home printer. I made exactly 2 copies. I kept one and I gave one to my daughter. And I'm showing you this just to illustrate that there are no rules when making a zine. You can do whatever the heck you want. You're likely not selling this. And the way I look at zines is it's for your own personal use. So have some fun with it. Okay. So this is just an 8-page zine I did. I printed it out on 8.5 by 11 paper. And so 2 pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper, fold them in half, you got an 8-page zine. That's the cover, the first spread. And that's that. So what I did with this is I mixed in some of my photography and some short fiction that I've written and some poetry and some other nonsense. It truly is total nonsense. I hope none of you were able to actually focus on any of that and read any of that stuff. But I wanted you guys to see this just to show you that have fun. Just do whatever you want. There's no wrong answers and no rules. All right, let's get into the technicalities a little bit. We'll talk about types of binding. We have wire O or spiral, often confused with each other, but they are truly 2 different types of wire binding. These are very familiar to anybody who was in elementary school or all the way through college and has a spiral notebook. But also a lot of calendars and cookbooks are printed this way as well. They're great, as I say, for calendars and cookbooks. They easily, some of the great things about it is that it easily lays completely flat. It folds all the way back in on itself, which is really handy. It does not allow for spine printing, and this is subjective, but it's not terribly professional, I don't think, YRO or spiral binding. The next one we'll talk about is saddle stitch binding, and many of you may not be familiar with the name, but you're familiar with this type of binding. Many magazines are produced this way. You can see there in that picture that I provided that it's basically a booklet that is stapled on the spine, and that's how it's held together. So your magazines, crap you get in the mail, things like that. So it lays flat pretty easily. Does not allow for any spine printing though. This is probably the cheapest type of booklet to get printed. Next up, we have what's called perfect binding. Again, another one that you are, if not familiar with the name itself, you are familiar with this type of binding. There's no doubt. If you had a friend or yourself maybe had back in the day a whole bookshelf full of National Geographic magazines, easily identifiable, obviously in a bookcase, those were all perfect bound. Many magazines, I'd say probably most magazines are saddle stitched, but many magazines are perfect bound. Old phone books were perfect bound. Any paperback that you buy at the bookstore or through Amazon or wherever you get your paperbacks are perfect bound. Perfect binding is extremely common. I think that perfect binding is very professional because you get a spine, and it's nice when you have something in your bookcase or whatever, and you can see what it is. Some of the drawbacks, though, is it might lay flat, but it probably won't. And pressing down on it to get it to do so just might damage the spine. So if your project includes something that you really want to be able to lay flat, I would consider YRO or saddle stitch. Finally, in terms of binding, we have hardcover binding. This is by far the most professional and classy looking option. It is also the most expensive option. Very durable, will last forever, most likely. Like perfect binding, it also won't lay flat without possibly damaging the spine, but it does, like perfect binding, allow for spine printing. So if you're looking at doing something like a portfolio or a coffee table book, this is the way to go if you can, afford to pull the trigger on it. And when I get to the part of where we're going to actually start building the zine, you're going to be able to see a comparison of all these different types of binding from a price standpoint.
Hey, Kyle, just a quick little question on saddle stitch. Do you know if there's like a limit to the number of pages you can do that?
There is.
Yeah.
I believe it's usually around 100.
Oh, that's higher than I thought. Okay.
Yeah. It'll actually show up on the website that I'm going to use to do this, and we'll actually be able to answer that specifically.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I should add, I meant to mention this, but back from the late 90s through, I don't know, through the first decade of the century, I ran a small graphic design and printing business. So I'm not by any means an expert, but I have some experience in the printing world and the layout world. So I can speak to a lot of this. And these terms weren't new to me, saddle stitch and perfect binding and things like that. So okay, so printers that I've used, Eric Hageman, the guy who taught the class that I took, he's a big fan of MagCloud, and that's what he has done all of his projects through, as well for himself personally, as well as for the club he's in, the Southwest Photography Club. So when I got done with that class, the first thing I did is I laid out a magazine, a booklet, and uploaded it to MagCloud. And I was really excited. I got the booklet back, and I was really disappointed. I felt that the colors lacked vibrancy. They were really flat. Many of the photos were much darker than what they looked like on my screen, and I was not happy, and I was really discouraged. So I had also created and uploaded the same exact book to a printer called Mixam and sent that off. And when I got that one back, I was happy. That was it. Like, I was really, honestly, it exceeded my expectations in terms of photo quality. And that book that I created, I did a lot of things that you're not supposed to do, like put text close to the edge. And another thing that it's not that you're not supposed to do this, but I put photos on the spine, on the what they call the gutter. So it's going from the, one photo going from the left page to the right page. And sometimes that's hard. A printer might like not quite line it up exactly. And Mixam did a great job of it. So every subsequent book that I've created, I've done through Mixam. I'm not saying MagCloud is bad. I just had a bad experience with them. And I that's just how I feel about them. But these aren't the only two around. I did a quick web search this morning for online zine printers, and it yielded just on the first page results such as Print Ninja, Dazzle Printing, Docs Zoo, Printing Center USA, Kin Printing, Zine Printer, PixArt Printing, Fourth Wall, and Docs Direct. If you go to the next page, there was probably just as many more. This is a crowded space, and there's a lot of options out there. I found one I liked. It's Mixam, and you're going to see Mixam in action tonight. All right, I want to talk really quickly about the software I am using. As a lot of you know or have heard me say, I divorced I divorced Adobe a year and a half ago because I was really, really tired of paying their subscription fees, their monthly subscription just to use their software. So I tried a bunch of different ones like Capture One and DxO and some other stuff. I did their free trials, and I ended up with Affinity in their software bundle, which is consists of three pieces of software: Publisher, Designer, and Photo. And there's lots of things I love actually about their suite of software. But the best thing is that they are $70 a piece or $165 for all three, and you don't pay another penny ever again for the rest of your life. You buy it, you own it, and that's what it is. I also love that this is professional software. It's not like some open source thing or poorly supported. There is a ton of documentation on their website, and it is extremely valuable. There's people comment that it has a steep learning curve. The Affinity's software does, but if you're not familiar with Photoshop, that's got a pretty steep learning curve too. I didn't find it too challenging. I have experience in Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign, Quark Express. I meant to look up today the versions of Photoshop and Illustrator that I was on when I started doing graphic design, and I forgot to do that, but I would bet it was probably 4 or 5 for Photoshop and probably 3 or 4 for Illustrator. I started using InDesign when it came out. I switched from Quark Express to InDesign when it came out. So I have a lot of experience using Adobe's products, and I am every bit as happy with Affinity as I was with Adobe. I will say the only thing that Affinity lacks or doesn't have is a competitor for Lightroom. So for my digital asset management, I use Adobe Bridge, which is free. Um, so the workflow is a little different, but I have found that I can achieve the same exact results with the Affinity suite as I could with the Adobe suite. And I will actually also mention if you're into video and stuff like that, the things that Adobe does, it's in addition to their print stuff, like oh crap, I can't even remember the names of them, but they have a big presence in video and things like that. If you're into that and motion stuff, Affinity doesn't have that. I'm not into that. So
Yeah,
anyway,
you're talking about Adobe Premiere Pro.
that's it. Anyway, if you're good just doing, needing something to edit photos and do print stuff, the Affinity Suite's great. I put a little note down here that the Adobe Creative Cloud All Apps subscription is $60 a month for as long as you want to use their software. For 3 months worth, for less than 3 months worth of that, you can own all 3 of Affinity's software. I feel like I should mention that I am not I don't work for Affinity. I'm not getting paid by them. It just seems like it may be because I really am a big fanboy of them. It's good stuff. And then there's a website called Affinity Revolution that is independent from Affinity, and it's run by a gal named Allie Anderson, and she does some amazing tutorials that are many of which are free, and those that she charges for are just $29.99 for a couple hours worth of tutorial. They're good stuff. All right, so that's wraps up the slide deck presentation. I'm going to switch to putting a zine together, but I want to pause for a second in case anybody has any questions or is unclear about anything.
Compared to Shutterfly, I mean, what's the just total difference in sophistication and capability?
That's a great question. I haven't used Shutterfly in years, maybe not since my daughter was in her single digit years, and she's 25 now. So maybe it's been a long time. With Affinity, well, with any page layout program, Affinity Publisher or Adobe InDesign, Quark Express, you have the freedom to lay out your text and your images and do effects like drop shadows and things. What I found is that you have way more control over those types of things than you do by using somebody's proprietary software on their own website. That's how I feel about that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. It is just, yeah, far more capability when you want to do
Yeah,
something more sophisticated.
that's exactly right. You have more options, more sophistication, and in my opinion, better results. Uh, but again, I do have a graphic design background, so it does come kind of easy to me, but there's not a massive learning curve on this stuff. There truly isn't. All right, so here we are on Mixam's website, and this is where you're going to start. Okay, you're going to go to mixam.com, and you're going to click here. You're probably going to click on booklet. They have magazines as an option, and catalogs, and paperback books, and hardcover books. Choose the one you want, but I'm going to keep it on booklets, and we're going to go down here to quantity, which I have set at 10, and color printing, which I think I can't imagine anybody's going to be interested in just black and white printing. Even if you're only printing and uploading black and white pictures, I still recommend color because you get more depth in your black and white photos when through color printing. So right now with some options like paper type, satin, 80-pound text, and I'll click on saddle stitch or staple. You can see that for 10 books, we're looking at $47.50. And that is, I want to stress that is not per book. That is total. And there's obviously going to be some shipping and sales tax, but that's what we're talking about there. Perfect binding, you're looking at $56.50. If we do YRO, that's $64. And then let's just go up here to hardcover books and change the quantity to 10 and see what we're looking at. So yeah, hardcover, instead of $4 or $5 a piece, you're looking at about $15 a piece, which I would have absolutely expected. But that's what you get with hardcover. It's a professional product, and it's going to last forever. So expect to pay a little more.
Kyle, can I
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
when I played around on the website here, I noticed that, for example, I would put in some parameters like 8 pages, a certain size, and it would come up with a number. Like if I only had a few pages, it might be, I don't know, $4 for one copy. And then I would try a slightly different size, and it would jump up to 27. So I noticed that there seemed to be certain standard sizes and maybe non-standard sizes, but I didn't see where anywhere on the website they actually said, here are the standard sizes. And so it seemed to me that I would have to try every combination and come up with my own list and then think about that when I'm designing the book.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. I ran into that when I just started doing my own zines, my first one, and I was changing things like the paper type from satin to gloss, and doing different text weights and things like that. And suddenly, you're right, it went from $47 or whatever to $100 for the same quantity. I don't quite know what to say about it in terms of like what their standards are or what their less expensive ones are, but clearly their economies of scale are set up to encourage you to stick with a less expensive one. If I learn anything about if there's any way that we can glean that from on their website, I will share that with the group. I've got a PDF I'm gonna send to Carl to disseminate to the group when we're done with Mixam on there and the Affinity websites, and then also just some like that little cheat sheet of that they'll find handy when you're creating some things. So
Yeah, I just want to add that I've been using MagCloud for about 15 years.
oh,
It doesn't have that property. That MagCloud is very, it gives you a number that you expect. It doesn't,
okay,
the wild swings around like Mixam seems to.
interesting. Yeah, and maybe that's a benefit of using MagCloud. Maybe I should have contacted them after I got that book back from them and told them I wasn't happy. And maybe that was a one-off thing. If you've been using MagCloud for 15 years, you're clearly happy with them. So,
I just looked at the first zine I did, and it was dated 2010.
okay, yeah, 15 years, spot on.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, so what I want to do for tonight's purpose is I want to do a saddle stitched booklet. I want to do it. I want to do it landscape, and I think 5.5 by 8.5 is fine. This is all arbitrary stuff. I'm not actually going to upload anything. I want you guys to be able to see how easy it is to lay this out. Actually, I'm going to drop the pages down to about 24 just in case I run out of time. And I will mention that when you're creating any type of book through these guys, it's a 4-page, they're increments of 4 pages, possibly not with YRO. Yeah, YRO is 4-page minimum as well. And that's because of how they print it. They take a sheet of paper, they print it on both sides, then they fold it in half, and then they cut off the spine. So you're so one sheet of paper turns into 4 pages, if that makes sense, guys. So saddle stitch, color, and 5.5 by 8.5 in landscape. I'm not going to change the text options or the paper types or anything like that. I am going to say we're going to do a cover. So that's 4 additional pages, and it's going to be a slightly thicker paper, 100-pound cover, and the insides are 80-pound text. So you're going to get a feel, you're going to have a thicker piece of paper that is your cover, which I think is really professional. It's not mandatory. I've done books both ways, and I think they're fine either way. But I kind of like the cover. I'm going to drop my inside page count down to 20 because the cover is an additional 4, so that's a total of 24. All right, so I'm going to pop over here to Affinity Publisher, and we're going to set the dimensions and everything we need to do to get started. So the width is 8.5. I'm down here in page height now, which is 5.5. DPI, which is dots per inch, we want to leave at 300. Anytime you're doing anything for print, you want to be at 300. If you're doing something that you want to do a layout like this, that you only produce a PDF for screen resolution or digital, you're okay with doing 72. But for print, you got to do 300, or you're going to be really unhappy with the results when you see those. Document units, inches, you can put it wherever you want. I'm an inch guy. Image placement here, where it says image placement, prefer embedded. I don't think that Adobe InDesign gives you an option, at least not in the setup, but Affinity Publisher does. And I'm going to leave it prefer embedded. And what that does is that any photo that we place into this publication or into this booklet is going to be embedded into the file. So the downside is that your Affinity Publisher file size is going to be really big, but the upside is that I don't have to keep track. If the images are linked, I don't have to remember that and keep track of where those images are. Like, say I move them from one folder to another, Publisher is not going to be able to find them. I'm not going to get rid of any photos. I don't do that. But just in case I move something around and suddenly Publisher can't find it, that's a real pain to figure out what it's looking for and where it is. So I'm going to say prefer embedded all the time. I'm going to pop over here to pages, and we're going to say number of pages 24, because that's what I believe I told Mixam to do. And I'm going to arrange these horizontally. So left to right next to each other. You could do vertically if you were doing a calendar, and if you were laying out a calendar or something like that, that's a reason to do vertically. I'm leaving it at horizontal. Over here in the color space, color format is CMYK, and that's what you want it to be, because printers print in CMYK, and that is cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Yes, black is designated by a K. I heard a rumor that black and blue went out behind the bar and had a fight over who was going to have to give up and have, not be able to use B as their color, and blue won. So black is relegated to K. I just made that whole story up right now. Hope you liked it. So leave your color space as CMYK. Margins, and this information is all on the Mixam website, but you're, sorry, I'm going to do one more thing that I missed, going back to pages. We want to say facing pages. That preserves the spread in the inside pages so that you can see it, and you'll understand that when I get into the layout, you'll understand why that's important. So facing pages is important. I'm going to go back over here to margins, and you're going to have inner margin. Mixam says leave a 1/2 inch. So I've got 0.5 there, and then 0.25 or 1/4 inch on all the other 3 sides, top, bottom, and outer. So I already have my margin set. And then the last option is for bleed. So what a bleed is, for those of you unfamiliar with printing, is that if you have anything, whether it's a graphic, whether it's text, whether it's a photo, no matter what it is, if you want it to go all the way to the edge of the piece of paper, you actually have to extend that visual element an eighth of an inch past to the edge of the paper, so that when they print it and they have it all printed and they have it put together and they have it in the cutter, that when there is a little bit of shift in the pages when it's on the cutter, and so it's unlikely that it's going to shift by a full eighth of an inch, but if it does, you're going to have, if you don't have your image extending past the actual cover or the edge of the page, you're going to get a little sliver of white in there, and it's going to look really tacky and unprofessional. So a bleed is printable items that extend past the edge of the page, so that when it's cut, when the booklet is cut, you don't have a sliver of white paper showing there. Okay, so those are that's all eighth of an inch. I rounded up to 0.13 here. Okay, I am going to hit create, and we're going to have over here on the left, you can see all my pages. Up here is the cover, the front cover, and down here is the back cover. And inside are all the spreads. Those are called spreads. So it's, inside cover here, page 1, page 2, page 3, and so on. So like I said, guys, we're going to throw something together. I'm just going to do this really sort of, I'm not following any rules. I think I made that clear. So I'm gonna turn on this little guy up here that is a way to toggle between your margins. So this, you can see this little, it looks purple to me, this little line outside of the page is the bleed line, and this little margin here inside the page is the margin. I find it helpful to see that. And at times I find it helpful to not see that. So I toggle often back and forth between that view. I'm going to leave it on for right now. I'm actually going to go find my picture frame rectangle tool, and I'm going to put that in here, and it's going to allow me to put my first picture in here. So here we go. All right. I have a bunch of images that I've put in a folder specifically for this presentation, and I'm really not going to be too picky about which one I use. We're going to use this one for this guy, the cover, and I want to make sure that I'm getting both of those guys in there. I might cut him off just a little bit. There we go. And I've just decided right now on the fly that I don't want it to actually go full bleed, because what I want to do is I want to put a rectangle of just black text here. I just decided. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I am going to tell it to have no border and to have black fill, and I'm going to drop it to the bottom, and I'm going to call that good. I like the way that looks. I'm going to draw a text box here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to give my book a title. And I want it to be kind of beigey, kind of weird, kind of a weird color, but that's what I'm going with. And I want it to be justified really close to the picture. And I'm going to toggle off all of these marks, these printer marks, and we can get a clean look at it. And here we go. Yeah, sure. Great. Again, I'm not going to actually upload this for print, and I don't want to waste a lot of time on saying, was this perfect? Is this right? I just really want to show you guys how easy a process this is. So here we're going to get into the first spread. I do the same thing where I'm going to grab my picture frame, and actually what I want to do for this one is do a circle picture frame. Grab a picture, any picture. do that one. And I'm going to have some fun with this. That's a picture of my daughter at a carnival when she was 5 in 2005 at the Boulder County Fair. So I want to do some goofy stuff here. All right. There you go. That's my first spread. Like I said, no rules. Let's do whatever we want. I think maybe I'll do a see if I can pull this off. I'm going to try to do a diptych or not a diptych, but I don't know what it would be called. It might be several frames of one picture. You'll see what I mean in a second here. I'm just looking for a one that's. There we go. Yeah, choose that guy. Just changing a couple settings in here so that I can resize the frame without resizing the actual image. And I don't know why that didn't exactly work. There we go. All right, so there. I like that. I'm gonna select all 4 of these, and I'm gonna go up here to I want to make sure that these are spaced perfectly. So I am going to say space, distribute horizontally, and that'll adjust them so that they're perfectly spaced. And just for fun, to give it a little visual element in here, I'm going to put a black line through there behind it because there aren't any rules. And then if we want here, we can put in maybe a little caption. I don't remember when this was, but I'm going to say April of 2021. Actually, this might have been the All-Star game. I don't remember. It's not important. And I don't want that text. I want this text to be black. There we go. I want it to be right here. Okay. That spread is done. Next, I'm going to go full bleed on this one with a few pictures. I didn't just pick this picture on purpose right now. I have a whole bunch of pictures or a bunch of images that are in that folder. I'm just kind of picking them at random. But since this popped up, I'll mention that what I told Carl at the beginning of the meeting is that I had submitted some images for the Denver Street Photography Facebook group. A gallery on Santa Fe Arts District called Denver Voice was highlighting some of that group's work, and this is one of the pictures I submitted, and it's hanging on the wall there, which I'm really proud of. Fellow member Ben Hernandez also has an image there, as does Jim, who is a guest today. So it was a lot of fun to see our artwork on the wall. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. These don't really go together, but there aren't any rules. Again, we're just doing this to blaze through. So those are two full bleed images that are on that spread. So let's do something here just to show you guys that it doesn't have to all be photos. Let's see. I'm gonna just all right. We're gonna change this font to something with a serif in it. I am going to go with Big Caslon just for fun. And I'm just going to adjust the font size so that it takes up the whole page. And then here on the other side, I'm just going to do a graphic element of just some graphics just to be goofy. And I will make this one that color, and I will make this one that color, and I will make this one that color. None of them match, and that's okay. All right. Oh, I've got some text cut off here. So let's dial that back in. There we go. All right. More images. I don't like that one. I don't want to use that. There we go. That's better. I'm going to have this bleed off the top and the left. And then I'm going to do another picture over here. Maybe two pictures over there. That's a picture I took of a pedicab driver in Manhattan in 2005, and I often call that the first street photograph I ever took, for whatever that's worth. And then just for fun, we're going to have this one bleed up off the top and this one bleed up off the bottom. And if we want to look real quick and see what these look like without the bleed and without the margins, it's a little cleaner. And you can easily do that by clicking up here on this image or hitting Control W on your keyboard. All right, we are about halfway through this book. I'm going to blam through a couple more things.
I just have a real quick question on image placement that you're doing here. Is this kind of like InDesign where if the image is 300 ppi, it comes in at a certain size?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Carl. I wanted to mention that so some people get really super detailed about making sure that each image is sized perfectly. Like they go in and they say, well, this image is going to be 4 inches by 6 inches on the page. So I'm going to go into Photoshop, I'm going to resize it, make sure it's 300 DPI at 4 inches by 6 inches. And when I place it, I don't have to resize it at all. I don't necessarily take the time to do that. I shoot, most of my stuff's full frame and or for a while I had a crop sensor, but a lot of my stuff, it's like high resolution photos. And what I generally do, because I'm not selling any of these things and I don't really have any clients to please, I am simply how do I say it? I'm letting the PDF export process do all of this stuff for me. But I would not recommend doing any of this stuff with, say, like a 72 DPI image. It's going to be really pixelated when you're all done with it. Does
Sure.
that kind of answer your question?
It kind of does, yeah. But and again, I was going to mention too that I mean, even as we're watching this here, you can see that you've got the controls in Affinity to resize the image to fit the square, to move it around, to shift it around. So, like you said, as long as you're starting out with images that have enough pixels that, if you wanted to do a full bleed on a left side of your spread, if you've got enough pixels to cover that and it's 300 PPI or more, you're good to go all around. You don't really have to worry about it. You can place it and size it and do whatever you need to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't tend to get too bogged down by those details. I
Sure.
just, again, I'm not selling this. I'm not trying to make money off of it. As you can see from that example that I put together a few years ago that I showed you guys, honestly, I'm just goofing around here. So
Well, that's where a lot of people start too, is that they produce something that they're going to share with family. Like you said, it's from an event, it's from a party, it's from family reunion or something like that that they just want to distribute out to everybody in the family so they can share the memories.
exactly.
Okay.
Now I'm running into the issue where I'm choosing photos that I've already chosen, which isn't that big of a deal. I don't think anybody cares, but oh, there we go. That's a good one.
What are the rules of getting permission from people when you're doing street photography?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple schools of thought on that, and that is that so technically the law is that if you are out in a public space, you are giving permission to have your image photographed, whether you know it or not, and that's just the way our society works. Somebody told me that that's not true in Europe. I honestly don't know. But in the United States, currently, if you're in public, that is your giving permission to have your image taken by a photographer. There, many of the street photographers in the that I know in the Denver community will sometimes ask for permission. There are some street photographers that make their thing is street portraits, and they do engage with their subject and get permission to take pictures of them. Ken Wajda, if I'm saying his last name right, is the primary one that comes to mind when I think of that. He takes a lot of street portraits. So yeah, I think just be aware of your surroundings and use common sense. I ask for permission when it feels right, but I probably don't ask for permission most of the time. I will say that I've been doing street photography for years, and this April was the first time I had anybody ever get upset at me. It was a young woman. I took her picture and she got upset. She wanted me to delete it. Her boyfriend came back. He had moved on, didn't realize she had stopped. He came back and asked her what she was doing, and she said, "I don't want some creep taking my picture." And so I deleted it with no problem. Like it's no big deal. But I bring that story up to say that that is the only time I have ever been, been told that, that they didn't want their picture taken. It's an easy fix. You just delete it and it's gone. And there you go. So I'm honestly just I just have two more spreads after this one left. And I really want to get to the part of this where we upload it to mix them so you can see how it does that. I think it's a really valuable process. It's really the most important thing of what we have going on tonight. So I'm kind of just rushing through these last few pages of layout. Is there anything, that anybody's hoping to see in terms of from a layout perspective, or have I demonstrated really truly what, we can do text, we can do graphic images like I'm doing here. We can do all sorts of things. Do you guys feel like you're getting the gist of what's happening here in terms of the layout? I'm going to take that as a yes if nobody said no.
Kyle, I assume you can put borders or shadows on your
Yeah,
images.
you can. Yeah, let me do that real quick.
And Kyle, I'll give you another challenge to have a bold word going across the two pages, which cut out is the photos behind it, and the word itself shows with the photo inside the letters.
So
Can
that is,
Affinity do that?
Affinity can do that, and it has to do with a mask. And I think I can pull that off. Um,
All right, if not, that's okay.
uh, yeah, I may or I may not be able to, but um, let me first honor Jim's request, do a border and a drop shadow on this one. Or what I did there. Let me just draw a new frame. All right, so I'm gonna say let's do a yellow or whatever color this is, orangey color or whatever, as a stroke. And Affinity defaults usually to a really minuscule width. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna change it to a 5-point rule. Actually, let's make it a little bit bigger so you guys can all see it. And then, oops. Make this just a little bit smaller, and I'm going to apply a drop shadow. I'm going to go in here to layers. I'm going to go down here to FX, and I'm going to try, I'm going to say outer shadow. I like 37 on the opacity, 17 on the radius, and 7 on the offset. Personally, I dig that. Actually, that's not enough on this one, so I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that offset. There. That's not perfect, but it's not bad. So there you go, Jim. There's your image a with a frame and a drop shadow. And
Good
now,
job, Kyle.
thanks for Carl's request. I actually haven't done this. Whoops, that's not what I want. I haven't done this, but I think I know. I think I know how to make it happen. Let's do that one. And let me draw, or let me write, or put in some text here. All right, I think the first thing we need to do is convert the text to outline. Convert to curves. There we go. So that's no longer, once you convert text to curves, it is no longer editable text. Looks like text, reads like text, but to Affinity Publisher, it is simply a shape. And now I'm going to go into the layers palette and I am not 100% sure. Mask to below. Let's try that. There we go. Feeling pretty good about myself.
Very cool.
Yeah. The only thing I can't do now is kind of want to move that image.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but I don't know why it's giving me this. Oh, there we go. It's changing the perspective a little bit, but yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Let's see. No, I didn't want to do that. All right, I'm not gonna mess around anymore. Whoops. I'm gonna leave it like that just because it's good enough and there aren't
Yeah,
any darn
the whole
rules.
idea is knowing that you can do it,
Yeah,
that's what really counts. So
exactly. All right, so what we have left is the back cover. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put my website, like just some information that you might put.
okay, and while you're doing that, I just want to mention that in Zoom in the chat, in response to Steve's question about photographing in public, last year in the October newsletter, I had 2 pages full of information about laws and rules and regulations and common courtesy and that kind of stuff. So there's a link to the October 2024 newsletter. And for the folks in the room, if you could just remember the October 2024 newsletter, if you want to read up on public photography and what some of the U.S. laws and customs are.
Always handy with information is Carl.
Thank you.
I'm going to put in a goofy logo here. There we go. Just a dumb idea I had for a logo design years ago because my great uncle has a business called Durlam Electric back in my hometown in Iowa, and I thought, man, what a cool name for a digital photographer. I don't actually think it's that cool anymore, and I don't use it, but I thought just for the purposes of today, I would just throw it in there. So there we go. There's the back. There's the back cover. Maybe we'll do just some quick photo there. If I can find one that I haven't used yet. Oh yeah, I like this guy. All right. Okay, great. All right. So let's say that you have toiled over this for weeks and weeks and you finally have it where you want it. So we're going to do 2 things really quick. We're going to go to over here to this tab that says pre-flight. And it will often find things that are blatant mistakes that you don't want to go to press with. There's a spelling mistake because on the cover, I broke up the word photography into 2 words, photo and graphy, and so that's okay. That's what that's saying. There's a bleed hazard on page 11, 2 of them apparently. Some non-proportional scaling, spelling mistakes that aren't mistakes. My website and my email address, they're not incorrect, so I'm gonna ignore those. And since I'm not actually gonna send this for print, I'm going to ignore the other ones too. But it is here in this pre-flight panel that you can catch a lot of mistakes. I recently did one of the zines I recently did. I did a sort of magazine size zine of some of my landscape photography for my father-in-law, who he and his wife just love looking at my pictures, and he's got pretty severe dementia, and it brings them some joy. So I printed a sort of magazine style book for them, and I had a bunch of pictures in there, and I had captions on each picture, and I caught a lot of spelling mistakes in this panel, so that was nice. Anyway, so I'm happy with the pre-flight situation. So I am going to export this to PDF. Okay. You go to I always do this keyboard shortcut, but we're going to go File. We're going to go Export. And we're going to up here make sure that we have PDF chosen. You can see that Affinity Publisher, that was a slip there. Affinity Publisher has a lot of options for export, just like Adobe InDesign does and Photoshop does. But what we want is PDF. And if you were doing this for non-print, just digital only, and here we can, in the presets, we can choose digital, high quality, or digital, small size. If you were going to send this out via email, I would recommend doing small size. But for this, I want to do press ready. That is the highest quality PDF we can create in terms of the preset. You notice that include bleed is checked. That is what we want. And down here where it says area, it says all spreads. For Mixam, we don't want to output spreads. We just want to output pages. So what's going to happen is these spreads, if we choose just all pages, are going to each come out as their own individual page, because a spread is 2 pages, right? You have the left page and the right page. So if you were, yeah, I'm not going to say any more about that. You want to make sure that you're just exporting all pages. Most of the rest of the stuff is from the preset, and it's perfect as set. Use the DPI of 300, downsample images above 375. So if you have an image in there that's huge, and it's like needlessly huge, this process will downsample it so that it is not gigantic. We're going to say yes to allow JPEG compression. Quality 98 is fine. Color space is really important. If you're uploading this to Mixam or MadCloud or wherever, you want to make sure that it is CMYK. And I think pretty much everything else we can leave as is. We do not want to include printer's marks on this. And so that is not checked here. You don't want to check that. Oh, yes. Sorry, one more thing that is really important. You want to embed all the fonts, and that is extremely important, because if you're using some font that is unusual or whatever, and this is something I encountered a ton when I was in the printing business 20 years ago. Clients would send me files, but they wouldn't have the fonts embedded. And if the fonts aren't embedded and they don't send me the font, then I can't, and I don't have the font that's in their file, then my computer can't render the fonts correctly. And then you end up with pixelated fonts, which looks really unprofessional and super tacky. So make sure that you are embedding all fonts. That is it. That is everything. I'm going to say export. It's going to ask me where I want to put it. I want to put it there. And I am going to name this something with the abbreviation FNL for final in it. I'm going to hit export, and that's going to take a second. I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling really good about myself for getting that image cropped by the text. Carl, I appreciate that challenge.
All right. I'm proud of you too. So, I was thinking back to my InDesign days when I worked at the local newspaper and how I would have approached it, but glad
Yeah.
it's very simple.
As with so many things in this really complex software, there's probably 4 or 5 or more ways to achieve the same result. So
Sure, exactly. Quick question while we're waiting here.
Yeah.
When you process your images that you're going to use in here, do you convert them to CMYK color space, or you just let the software take care of that for you?
I let the software take care of that for me.
Perfect.
I just, again, for me, I guess I guess I just don't care enough. Now, again, as I said, if I was doing this for money, for a client is what I mean by for money. For a client that I had to please, that would change. That would be a game changer on totally how I would approach this. I would take it way more seriously because I would want to get paid. I'm obviously not getting paid for this, and I don't want to get paid for this. And I'm going to be happy with the results I get, and just leave it at that. So
Kyle,
yeah, Mark.
related to that, Kyle, I think these zines and books that you do are casual. In a professional book, it would be a color managed workflow, and I don't think Mixam or MagCloud or anybody provides a color managed workflow. They don't provide printer profiles for their process or anything like that. You can't do any soft proofing, for example, to my knowledge.
I believe that's true to that extent, but if you're doing this professionally for a career and you have clients that you're trying to please, and this is what I did when I was in the business, I had a printer locally that I used. Um, I would probably be reluctant to use an online printer if I had a client. I would want to be able to go walk in and see the printer and do a press check if I needed to, and whatever. So yeah, that's a great point, Mark. But it's probably beyond the scope of what I'm interested in managing, if you will. Okay, so hopefully, if I have my page dimensions and everything set correctly, when I go in here to upload this, it's all going to work, and that's the goal. So you can see here on the right, there are your two design options. You have to upload your own artwork, which is what I'm doing. They do give you the option to design online, and I have not tried that. If you're not familiar or don't want to become familiar with Affinity Publisher or Adobe InDesign or any page layout software, you're welcome to try the design online and see if it works. I just don't have any experience with it, and I can't talk to that. So with everything set, let's see, 20 pages. Yep. I'm going to say add to cart. Let's see what we got going on here.
Kyle, another
Yeah.
thing here is I would never do this without getting a proof copy.
Yep.
First, I wouldn't go for 10, without getting a proof copy. First.
Yeah. Right. We're going to get a digital proof here in a few minutes. And then if you want, if you want to just drop the quantity down to 1 or 2 or whatever, that's fine. Like
Yeah.
you can do that. Because I'm with you too. So looks like the price went down, and I'm not sure why exactly. I hope I didn't screw anything up, but they're saying it's now average of $3.35 a piece. So that's kind of cool. This all looks good, so I'm going to say continue. All right, so here on this page is where we upload the file, and I believe. Let me just do it this way. I'm going to go here to upload files. And I'm going to go to my presentation, double click that. And this is going to take a second also. You get down here, right here, you get a progress report of what's happening. It says it can take up to 15 minutes, but it's not going to take 15 minutes. But it might take a couple minutes. I forgot to, now that I'm in here, I forgot Carl to go and look at what the max page count for a saddle stitched is, but I really do think it's close to triple digits. It's pretty high. And probably the type of paper that you choose will yeah, here it comes. We'll go into that. So that was super quick. So what just happened is it just took my PDF that I created and put the cover where the cover goes, put the back cover, front cover where the front cover goes, back cover where the back cover goes. And then it laid out each spread, as you can see here, and I hope this makes sense to everybody. It laid out each spread perfectly. Down here, it'll tell you that that's not even all the spreads. So if you want to see the rest of them, you got to go to page 2. And that's there's the one where we did the fun text, knocking out the photo. So yeah, that's it. That's uploaded. What you can do now is we're going to hit preview here. And this is a really fun. You get an actual image of what your book looks like, going through page by page. And I like here how they put a little shading where the spine is to give you a feel for what it would really look like. But here we go. And that was the last spread, and there's the back cover. All right, this opened up in its own tab. So there's we still have our existing tab over here. And then, Mark, here's a proof button, which, oh shoot, I don't think it's going to take, I can't believe it will take several minutes, but I've actually never done the proof thing. I've only done the preview. I guess we'll see what happens. But, it's obviously not a printed proof. And if that's what you want, then, do this with a quantity of, 1 or 2. Talking about quantity, though, I will mention that the first couple books I did, I think I set the quantity at like 3 or something like that, and they ended up sending me 7, maybe 6 or 7. It's not easy for a printer to just print 1 copy of anything, honestly. It's easier for them to do a few. So I bet if you put your quantity at 1 or 2, you'd end up getting 4 or 5, for whatever that's worth.
Another thing I would do, Kyle, is if I had a book of, say, 20 pages, and I was concerned about the photographic reproduction, I might just out of the whatever I was using to produce the PDF, in your case, Affinity Publisher, I would just make a small PDF of maybe the first 2 or 3 pages or 4 pages and print that to see.
Yeah.
There's no point printing all 20, looking at the first 2 pages, and then saying, "Oh, this didn't work."
Yeah, right. Yeah, and what Eric did, that guy at in the Southwest Photography Club, whose class I took, one of his first projects was he just put together a book with even like color swatches in it and grayscale swatches, 10,
Yeah.
0%, 10% black, 20% black, 30% black, all the way up to 100%, on one page, and then, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black on another, and then different gradients of those, and some text samples and all sorts of stuff, and got that back just to make sure that, what he could expect. Not 100% sure where the proof is exactly. In the interest of time, I'm probably not going to worry about it. It says that there's a check mark there. I don't know if that means. I'm sorry. I'm just probably not going to worry about it. But we can see now that it got our files, it laid them out properly, because we took the time to make sure that the document that we started with was correct, and we did facing pages and all sorts of things. So at least in the layout. But anyway, I'm really happy with this. The next step would be to go over here to payment, which it's asking me to enter my delivery address in the details tab over here to proceed, which, as I mentioned to you guys, I'm not going to take it this far. But if I wanted to, billing address, email, name, phone, delivery address, populate that information, and then you're able to go over here to payment and get everything going. I just think that this is really fun. And I mean, like I said, I've already done 3 projects. I've got ideas for a few more, and they're, it's kind of a never ending thing. Like when I get an idea to do something again, I'm going to remember that I can print it, and cheaply and fairly quickly and on the fly. And I'm really stoked about it. But that's generally the gist of what I wanted to show you guys tonight.
Two things, Kyle. While you were going through the end of the process there, I popped onto the website and double checked their saddle stitch or they're stapled. And on that page, the maximum number of pages that I saw was 84.
Okay.
So their little slider for the minimum maximum page, it didn't go past 84.
Okay. And yeah, and different printers may have different numbers, different maxes for that or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's still that's a pretty big saddle stitch booklet.
Right. Right.
42 sheets of paper, if you will. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with these. My father-in-law talked to my wife the other day, and we went on about how much he appreciates the books that I made for him. And again, it's just you do whatever you want with these, but for the mileage I'm getting out of it is like sending them to family or putting things together that people in my sphere might like, and that's fun.
Hey, Kyle,
Yeah.
I've been doing the same sort of thing with InDesign, but I don't actually print them. I just send off the PDF to all the people in my hiking club and whatnot that, we hike together to share the pictures instead of just sharing a set of random pictures or whatever. I'm gonna have to now see about actually getting it printed and stuff and see what it's like to get the hard copy in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, get a few copies, you're out maybe $50 with shipping or whatever. And I think it's really cool to do that you're doing that for your hiking club and sending them, PDF copies of pictures and stuff, images. That's really fun. And the layout process is identical to what I did. You just change a couple things, the DPI and whatever. But man, Bill, to have like a booklet in hand for those people that you do that with, I think would be really valuable.
Kyle, if I can jump in again.
Yeah, of course.
I do a completely different kind of zine. I do what are portfolios or little art books. For example, I took a photography trip to what in Colorado we would call Middle Park, and put that together. And I only have one photo per page. I don't do any layouts like you were
Yeah.
doing. And I like a square format because I have both verticals and horizontals. And you made a comment a month ago that you were using Mixam, so I went there and I looked for square formats, and they didn't have what I would prefer more than anything, which would be 12 by 12. I think 12 by 12 would be perfect for one of my little coffee table books.
Yeah.
And I only ever print one, and it goes on our coffee table. I don't give it to anybody or anything like that. Well, so for some real reason, they're very limited in their square sizes, and the prices are very high because they're considered non-standard, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not hired by Mixam or anything. There's always a good reason to shop around for sure. Yeah, like if you don't get the size, dimension options that you want, try MagCloud, try there's a ton of options. But that's a great point, Mark. If and that's a cool thing, right? I mean, if I have an idea about something I want and what I want is very specific, yeah, I'm gonna want to do that. And I'm gonna find a printer that's gonna be able to accommodate that. I'm hoping for at least 2,000 views of the YouTube video of this by December, Carl. So.
But your comment about carrying a zine of your street photography with you in case you encountered somebody and you wanted to show them kind of thing you do is a perfect example of why you want an actual zine that you can put in your camera bag
Yeah.
or something like that, and when we have guests coming for dinner, I do not want to fire up a computer or pass around a phone or do anything electronic. You know, we have our analog dinners.
Yeah.
So the coffee table's got a bunch of stuff on it already, and this just be one more thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I've only had that one confrontation with somebody who was unhappy that I took their picture, but I've had many confrontations from people where they're like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? You guys, are you just out taking pictures?" And if I had a book to be able to pull out of my bag and say, "Here's this is exactly what I'm doing," um, I'm taking pictures that that all look like generally like this, and if they could hold it and see it and interact with it, I think they would get really excited. At least that's my experience anyway.
There's a slightly related side of the business, which is uh, publishing books using Amazon Direct Publishing, I think is what it's called nowadays. And I have done a lot of that, um, including books that are entirely photographs. And the not my photographs, but for example, I have a book of 500 photographs from Dorothea Lange that has sold very, very well ever since I put it together. Um, there's there are a lot of technical aspects of producing a book that don't apply to a zine. Well, just one example is that uh, I was generating PDFs that were greater than 100 megabytes, and there was a limit, things like that.
Yeah.
And uh, Amazon Direct Publishing can publish uh, black and white, which is that's what you would use for a novel or something like that, or they can publish color. You can't do photography with their black and white publishing. It's a complete mess. You have to use the color books,
Yeah.
which are more expensive, but it's the only way to actually print photographs. So I think this is beyond the scope of the Focus Camera Club, but if anybody actually did want to publish a book, I have years of experience
Oh, nice.
publishing books with Amazon, including 2 novels.
Oh,
Uh,
no kidding. Okay.
one of my novels has sold almost 8 copies.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I didn't mention, and that is that you can, through MagaCloud for sure, and I believe also Mixam, you can upload, or you can upload your file and then actually sell it through their store. So that's what Jeff Tidwell did with I don't have my self view on, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a book called the Denver Street Photography Collective that he put together with a couple other local street photography guys. And he just sent out a link to, through the Facebook group to it. And so I bought one. It was like $18. That wasn't his cost or whatever, but that's what they were charging. And I was happy to, that's kind of expensive if you ask me, but I was happy to pay it to support the community. So you can, if you are interested in selling your project, you can do that definitely you can do that through MagCloud. But I believe most sites allow that.
Yeah, there's a website called Lulu that's been around for years and years. I'm pretty sure you can sell books through Blurb, and a few others, I'm sure. And Mark, I was just poking around on the Mixum site, and for their hardcover books, they do have 11.8 by 11.8.
Hardcover. Yeah.
So if you want to pay the cash for it, then you got
Yeah.
something that's really close to 12 by 12.
Um, I in my case, for the books that I actually want to sell, they have to be on Amazon.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no, there's no other place. Blurb bought MagCloud a little while ago. MagCloud
Oh, really?
MagCloud started off being owned by Hewlett Packard, who had invented the printer, a new kind of printer that came out, I don't know, 20 years ago, where every page that came off the printer could be different. And then they, added more hardware to do the binding. And
Huh.
15 years ago, as far as I know, MagCloud was the only game in town. Now, I think probably the hardware is all different. It's totally different. And this company's been sold one or two times, and now Blurb has MagCloud as a subsidiary.
Interesting. Yeah,
That's
because I
interesting.
know Dan Greenberg, longtime club member, has done a number of books and calendars and stuff through Blurb.
But as you can tell, I'm very enthusiastic about this, and I know Kyle is, and I would highly encourage everybody to just put together your own thing. It's really great to have it on paper in a form that's incredibly cheap.
And there's an undescribable gleeful feeling when you get that first zine in the mail and you open it up and you read through it.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I felt like 12 again, maybe, or something. I don't know. It was really neat.
All right. Do we have any further questions, or Kyle, you have any final commentary for us?
I will send you, Carl, hopefully by Friday, just like a one sheet PDF with some of the things that I talked about in terms of the document setup and the dots per inch and the bleed and the margins and all that stuff. I will get that out, and if I think of anything that might be helpful to add to that, I will. But
Sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah, then I can send it out to everybody when I announce the posting of the recording or something like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thanks for doing this, Kyle. I think you've exposed everybody to a whole new aspect of a whole new way of sharing their
Yeah.
photos.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And that was my intent. Totally. Like,
Oh, very
it's
good.
it's super easy and fairly cheap.
Yeah,
You
that's
didn't
the thing that
mention
I like
art.
about it too, is that it is simple. I mean, it is really simple.
Uh, yeah, you forgot to mention the hard part. Hard part's taking a photo that people want to look at.
All right, I think we'll wrap things up for this evening. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for the wonderful information. We appreciate it. And like Mark said, this should open up everybody's eyes to another outlet, another way to express and share their photography. So appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Good.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.